Good day, everyone. For teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. After months of violent conflict, peace may be on the horizon in eastern Ukraine, following a marathon 16-hour session that included the participation of French President Francois Hollande, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Russian President Vladimir Putin. An important breakthrough in peace negotiations has finally been reached. Both Ukrainian authorities and rebel forces agreed to a new ceasefire to take effect on February 15th.
Overall, I can say that what we have achieved gives us a lot more hope than if we had not achieved anything. That's why it can be said that this initiative was worth it. Towards the end, President Putin also put pressure on the separatists so that they agreed for a ceasefire from midnight Saturday. I am under no illusion, and we are under no illusion, that a lot of work is still necessary, but there is a real chance to improve things. Germany and France, France and Germany, together show that we have made a contribution in accordance with Europe.
It wasn't the best night of my life, but the morning, in my opinion, is a good one, because despite of the complexity of the negotiating process, we still managed to agree on the main points.
Taking a look now at some of those main points we heard him talking about. Both Ukrainian forces and the rebels will remove heavy weaponry from the front lines and create a 50-kilometer security buffer zone. They also agreed on allowing humanitarian aid to enter the eastern regions of Donetsk and Lugansk, while an amnesty is to be granted to those people involved in the violence in those regions. The document calls for the approval of a self-governance law for Donetsk and Lugansk while remaining part of Ukraine. The disarmament of rebel forces will take place following local elections, and according to officials, a new Ukrainian constitution should be drafted by the end of 2015. And to Latin America, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has officially declared Thursday Youth Day here in the country. The declaration coincides with the one-year anniversary of opposition violence that took over the streets of major cities. On February 12th of last year, Venezuela's right-wing opposition launched a series of violent protests that included barricades and roadblocks, resulting in the deaths of 43 people. The effects of the violent protests, called guarimbas in Spanish, went largely unreported in major media. During the unrest, opposition protesters burnt public buses, trucks, and destroyed metro stations. Public buildings such as universities were torched by protesters, while blockades and barricades prevented food distribution for months. Areas closest to the border with Colombia were most affected, as some of the protests were coordinated by right-wing paramilitary groups. For more information on what has happened in Venezuela and how it relates to current destabilization efforts, check out our microsite, econwaronvenezuela.net. Despite the widespread repudiation of the violence by the majority of Venezuelan society, sectors of the nation's opposition have organized several activities throughout the country on Thursday. It coincides with the anniversary of those guarimbas. At the same time, internationally, 76 members of parliament in Britain have supported the Venezuelan government, citing what they called anti-democratic violence from extreme elements of Venezuela's right-wing opposition. National industries focused on technology and innovation in Ecuador have signed an agreement with the country's main export organization in order to promote Ecuadorian products abroad. Our correspondent Liz Sherfius brings us more now from Quito.
The Institute of the Promotion of Exports and Investments, or Pro-Ecuador, and the Alliance for Business and Innovation have signed a strategic agreement that seeks to stimulate Ecuadorian exports. Representing cooperation between the public and private sector, the agreement permits the exchange of information between the two institutions and has committed to finance, train, and give technical assistance to national industries.
Pro-Ecuador took a look at how this association of businesses from the public, private, and academic sectors is working, and it decided to get involved. The idea is to help by financing these ventures. Our role is to attract, invest, and strengthening exports. The signing of this agreement allows us to do this. It allows these 40 actors of the Alliance for Business and Innovation, who already work in a coordinated way, to become connected. This connection then supports the whole chain. This means that if I find somebody and I give them financial support, I then help them export, and then I attract the investment, and everything functions in an organized way.
Key industries expected to benefit from the agreement are toys, processed food, prosthetics, and technology. Director of AE Soft software conglomerate Jose Villarreal told teleSUR English that this support of the state is expected to give an extra push to the tech industry, attracting investment and eventually making Ecuador an exporter of technology.
Let's take banking, for example, which is very developed here in Ecuador, due to the agreement with Pro-Ecuador. They can create here the technology that is being used on a global scale, so that they can use these channels to commercialize massively.
By providing the funds to the public and private sector to expand innovation enterprises, Ecuador is working to support its industries, to attract investment so that they can be received by an international market. Liz Sherfius, teleSUR, Ecuador.
The 32nd round of the Colombian peace talks come to an end on Thursday. The government and the FARC delegations listened to the demands of women activist groups and the LGBTI community. They urged both delegations to stop gender violence and to consider women's rights and gender diversity in all of their agreements. The groups also demanded the government to join the unilateral ceasefire implemented by the guerrilla group in order to substantially reduce the conflict. A major figure of Mexico's PRD political party has resigned over the case of the 43 missing students from Ayotzinapa. Our correspondent Clayton Kahn now with more on his resignation.
Yesterday, the former governor of the Mexican state of Guerrero, Ángel Aguirre, resigned from the Party of the Democratic Revolution, or PRD, and declared that he would be open to being investigated by state and federal authorities over corruption and abuse of power. It was also yesterday that news circulated that the politician's brother and nephew, as well as other individuals close to his family, were detained by federal authorities accused of siphoning public funds and corruption. Now, Aguirre was still governor this past September when police in Iguala Guerrero attacked and disappeared the 43 Ayotzinapa students. Mass protests forced the governor to resign after the events. However, many still call for an investigation into his role in the Ayotzinapa case. It is still unclear if any investigation will be opened on the politician, whether that be for abuse of power or for his role in Ayotzinapa. In late January, the Attorney General's office essentially closed the investigation into the enforced disappearance of those 43 students. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for teleSUR here in Mexico City.
North to the United States now. Thousands gathered at the University of North Carolina to commemorate the lives of the 3 Muslim students who were killed Tuesday. The case's coverage has generated outrage, much of it reflected on social media. Local police claimed the shooting was motivated by a parking space dispute. However, the killer, Craig Stephen Hicks, was known for his extreme views against Islam and religion in general. 2 of the victims were Palestinian, and as our correspondent in Gaza, Noor Harazin, tells us, there is substantial outrage there over the murders of the students.
Today in the Gaza Strip, there was a rally and a protest that was organized in front of the UN office in the Gaza Strip. Tens of Palestinian students participated in this protest against the crime that happened in North Carolina yesterday, killing 2 Palestinian women and a Syrian man. They were condemning this crime, calling it a hate crime and also terrorism. They also condemned the reaction of the mainstream media and the Western media towards this crime and compared it to the Western media reaction to Charlie Hebdo. Meanwhile, in the Palestinian territories, the residents of Palestine have received good news that the Palestinian child, Malak al-Khatib, who was 14 years old and was arrested by the Israeli forces in the West Bank a month ago, will be released tomorrow, Friday morning.
And back in the United States, President Barack Obama has asked Congress to authorize a new legal framework for his military campaign against the Islamic State. The president said that the draft law would not authorize large, long-term ground operations, but the document's language is vague, permitting ground troops in so-called limited circumstances. The authorization would have no geographic limitations. The House and Senate are expected to vote on it in March. Our correspondent Alexandra Hall with more now from Washington.
President Obama has requested a 3-year authorization for the use of military force against the group known as ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And we're already hearing reactions on Capitol Hill. House Republicans, including House Speaker John Boehner, complained that the proposal is too limited, saying that restrictions will make it more difficult for the United States to win. On the other side, Democrats in Congress were skeptical of the proposal, which they say is too broad. And they're concerned, many are concerned, that this could turn into another prolonged war in the Middle East. Now, it's important to remember that the United States military has already carried out over 1,900 airstrikes in Iraq and Syria since last September. And although President Obama, in his remarks yesterday at the White House, said that this authorization does not allow for the deployment of ground troops, an accompanying letter did describe the possibility of special operations and rescue missions as needed. In Washington, I'm Alexandra Hall for teleSUR.
And to Europe now, Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras is visiting Belgium ahead of his first EU summit. The summit comes after talks on the Greek debt ended with no agreement on Wednesday. The dialogue is due to continue next week between the European finance ministers and the newly elected government. Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis says he is hopeful that a beneficial conclusion can be reached by the end of Monday. And to Egypt now, where the 2 Al Jazeera journalists imprisoned there have been released on bail. Both journalists spent 411 days in prison for allegedly supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. And now they await a new trial. Al Jazeera declared that their release on bail is a small step forward and hopes the court will dismiss the charges, which the press agency characterized as absurd. The situation in Yemen is rapidly unfolding. U.S. and British embassies have evacuated their diplomats. The United Nations Special Envoy Jamal bin Omar warns that the country is on the brink of a civil war. His declarations come after Al-Qaeda took over a military base in the south of the country, sparking heavy clashes. A collection of nearly 1,500 panda sculptures aims at raising awareness over the numbers of pandas in danger of extinction. The number of sculptures coincides with the number of pandas left in the world. The works are on display in the New Year's Paintings Festival in the Sichuan province, China. The pandas are formed in the shape of a sheep, the Chinese character that marks this new year. And in North Korea, hundreds of girls celebrate high school graduation wearing traditional hanbok dresses. The hanboks are characterized by vibrant colors and simple lines without pockets. Although the term literally means Korean clothing, the term of hanbok today often refers specifically to hanbok of the Joseon period and is worn as semi-formal or formal wear during traditional festivals and celebrations. More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For teleSUR English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Thursday.